everybody. Welcome back to It Is What It Is. I am super excited about the addition of my new intro that was done by a friend of mine that you will hear at the beginning of this. Spoiler alert, she did an outro for me as well. It's all very cool and exciting. Makes me feel very official. And if you are in need of a voiceover artist, let me know. I can get you connected with a really great one. And speaking of really great, I'm very excited to introduce my guest. You've heard their name on here many times, shout outs regularly, but today I finally have them as a guest. And Jess Walker is the person who has so lovingly created the cover art for this podcast that you see on all my posts. Jess Walker of Jet Artworks is an intuitive artist and tarot reader. They create intentional and wearable artwork. All clothing holds energy specifically designed to assist the wearer. The artwork includes channeled light codes. These light codes hold a vast array of intentions, including protection, balancing chakras, and assisting in the personal growth of the wearer. Plus, they look very cute. So welcome, Jess. I'm so excited to finally have you here.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on and do this. Like, it has been a long time coming, but I'm so
It
excited
really
to be
has.
here.
It really has.
I mean, all
Uh,
things in perfect timing, though, so there must have been a reason why I'm on now.
that's true. I'm sure we'll find out what it is shortly. Um,
Or, maybe we won't, but I'm sure that whoever is listening is going to be like, I needed this right now.
exactly.
Or at
Exactly.
least we hope. I mean, maybe I'll just ramble and people will be like, man, this person is insane.
That's always one of my worries, especially when I do an episode alone. I'm like, nobody wants to listen to me just talk to myself by myself, but I do it anyway. Um, so Jess and I actually know each other through a Facebook group that I've mentioned on here a couple times. Sort of started as a group for fans of Jessa Reed and her podcast Soberish, but it has evolved over time. Uh, different Facebook pages have been made, and now it's just this big incredible community of weird and woo and wonderful people. And so I went back and looked at our messages. I originally mentioned to you doing this back in August. And I think you and I have both been through a lot, even just since then, probably a little bit before then too. Um, very uncomfortable periods of transformation, to say the least. And so that
Yeah.
is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, I'm going to do a book pull. I'm trying to knock over all my books as I do that. All right. So this is going to be from, oh wait, where's the camera? Warrior Goddess Wisdom.
That sounds about right.
All right, so it starts with a quote. The great thing about getting older is that you don't lose all the other ages you've been. One thing I've noticed, the older I get, is how my spirit and my heart grow more with each day. I feel more comfortable in my own skin now than I ever did in my 20s. The movies and TV shows and mass media will tell you that you're supposed to go from awkward teen to confident young adult, seemingly overnight. And then before you know it, you're supposed to have to fight against the horrors of old age. That's just not the case. It takes time to ripen. Whether you consider yourself young or old or somewhere in between, it's never too early or too late to start growing into your own skin. The older we get, the more memories, stories, and skills for becoming our best selves we accumulate. We know enough at 40 not to jump headlong into a situation we got lost in at 30. Whatever age you are now will help inform the age you are becoming. Remember, age is just a number, not an indication of how well your skin fits. And then the action for today, these usually have like an action or a mantra or something, but the action is take a moment to be grateful for all the ways you've ripened. Think of all the progress you've made in becoming the woman you are meant to be or the person you are meant to be. I think that fits right in with the conversation that we're having today.
Oh, does
Um,
it ever? I mean, honestly, I feel like just over the last couple of years, I have reached that point of being comfortable with who I am. And everything before that was all a learning experience in order to get me to where I am now.
yeah, and it's one thing to, you know, it's you versus you, right? We try to outsource our blame and frustrations to things around us, but at the end of the day, it's just us versus us. And you have that to deal with. And then on top of that, you have all these societal expectations of like, you should be this by the time you're 25 and you should be this by the time, and like, it doesn't matter. Like, do what you want to do what makes you happy. But it's hard. It's hard to overcome that and feel like you're not failing or behind or less than, when you measure yourself against where other people are.
100%. And that's like probably the most difficult part to remember, is not to measure ourselves against somebody else, because we are really just on this journey to learn and grow and to be, you know, in our own energy, but like also being able to contribute what only we can contribute to the
Mm,
world. And how else can we do that if we're not living in our own unique, like, center, in our own unique energy?
mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, so more on that generally in just a minute. But before we get into all that, I would love if you would tell us your story and whatever that means to you.
Well, I, like many of the people in, especially in our group of friends, came into this world and learned what I needed to learn through trauma and
Mm,
abuse and a very hard life. And so, without like triggering people and getting too heavy into the details, it was a very, very difficult childhood. I have often said that I pretty well have been through every type of abuse that there is, um, right down to being kidnapped at one point. And just so that people don't freak out, it was a prank, but I did not know that at the time.
mm,
And so I was reacting in that moment as if I was literally being shoved in the back of a trunk by strangers to be taken off somewhere. And
God.
so I have like been through quite a bit, and that doesn't even touch, like, family stuff and relationships. And again, won't really get too deep into that type of stuff because that just is really triggering. And so it got to the point where I ended up falling into drugs and alcohol in one of my relationships, and we ended up going pretty deep into drugs. And I was a cocaine addict for over a year. I definitely was destroying my life. Previous to that, I had been in college. I was going to school for psychology. I was like 6 years into school. And after I got out of that relationship, realizing that if I could get away from him, I could get away from the drugs.
Mm,
Um, my people pleasing tendencies and the pay attention to me, I'm worthy, please tell me I'm worthy and validate this for me, that made me, in connection to him, do what he liked to do, which was drinking and doing drugs. And I
mm,
was like, I could get away from this and, change my life. And that was the turning point. That was in 20, at the very end of 2017, I realized that. And I moved in on my own in 2018. That was a very difficult year, not masking all of my emotion and
mm,
shoving it down with drugs and alcohol. My mom had passed away in 2016, which was a big catalyst for a lot of this. Um, I had then started to deal with all of it coming back up. And as many of us who were in like that big 2020 awakening group, um, the 2018 time period, a lot of our empathic, emotional energy bodies were turned all the way up. The dial was completely cranked,
mm.
and we were feeling a lot of things. And I
Yeah.
was I was one of the ones that ended up having to go to the psych ward. I was one of the
Mm,
ones. Thankfully, I didn't have to stay because, in Lethbridge, they were like, "Are you gonna probably unalive yourself?" And if you say no, at that point, you have to go to one of the other shelters. And so, like, that was fine. I ended up staying overnight in one of the shelters and realized that it was worse there than just sitting in my home.
mm.
So I went back home, and thankfully, right around that time, my stepmom was like, "Hey, there's this really cool podcast I think you should listen to." And so in January of 2020, I basically listened to 4 seasons of Soberish within 4.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I binged it hard. I basically had a spontaneous spiritual awakening. Um, Up until the point where like my mom, who had passed away in 2016, came and sat at my kitchen table with me and was like, so listen, we're about to do some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things are going to change. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
hi
Okay.
mom. Like, how's it going? We had a very emotionally, like, wonderfully healing moment where, even though like when she had passed away, it was from brain cancer. And so when I had seen her on like, I don't know, it was like 2 days before she passed away, um I could tell that everything was still working inside her
Mm,
brain, but she couldn't talk and she couldn't move. And I was like, and this is when we say goodbye. Like, that's
mm,
not a life for anybody. And so yeah,
yeah.
2 days later she passed away. And then during this moment in my kitchen, she just explained to me that, she had to do what she needed to do on the other side to become who she needed to be here for me during my awakening,
Mm,
so that she could be a guide for me. And so, unlike an ancestor, she has come back as her higher self. And so she doesn't look quite like she looked here in the 3D, but of course I can tell that it's my mom.
mm,
And it's just really cool to have that kind of support. Like, I'm very close with my mom, with one of my main guides. And so it just really helped to assist me in this growth process, and, dying and shedding the old parts of me and having my rebirths 150,000 times in the last 2 years. Because, like you said, since August, I'm pretty sure that I've gone through 7 death processes. And it did start like just before that with the ending of a relationship in May. And so, yeah, here we are now. I am throughout the whole process, I really leaned into like my intuitive gifts. I have always loved art. I have found a way to mold the two together. I have found a way to kind of take the parts of psychology that I like, because I wanted to help people. And that was my main thing, is that I have this burning desire to just help people.
mm,
And it all started with helping myself first.
yeah.
And figuring out exactly what it is that I desire to do. And I don't know exactly who it is that I'm meant to be, because I'm pretty sure that I'll die another 150,000 times in the next 2 years and be reborn 150,000 times over. And so, yeah, everything will change. But currently, I am an intuitive artist and a tarot reader. And I really enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah, I don't think well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. That was really
You're
great.
welcome.
I was certainly not prepared for the number of deaths and rebirths that I would go through. Um my my understanding, and really now an appreciation of death is much different than it was before I went through my awakening. And it I couldn't even tell you how many it's been, you know. It's like so many have happened, so many more will happen. And it's not as scary as I originally thought it was. Um and oh, I was also gonna say, can't remember exactly how I found Soberish. But I know that when I first found it, I tried to listen to it and it just something was like, you're not ready for this yet. And some time passed and some things changed. And when I came back to it, I ended up just sort of picking randomly episodes instead of going in order. And it was always what I needed to hear. And I remember like early awakening, just being so excited, especially with my sister. I was like, oh my God, you have to listen to this stuff. It's so great. And I just wanted everyone to know how great everything was. And I had no
Isn't
idea
that
like what was about
typical
to come.
though? Isn't that just so typical though of an awakening? It's like once you have that awakening, you're like, everybody needs to know this. And so then
Hmm.
you start going around and you're like that frantic person, like, oh
Yep.
my God, aliens are real. And you're just like knocking down the door of like anyone that will listen. And you're just like, I really am that insane person. And then finally, like you kind of like calm down after, I don't know, a couple days, couple weeks, however long it takes an individual to just be like, oh, wait, not everybody's aware of this. And we kind of have to allow
Yeah.
people to wake up in their own way. And I don't know, I kind of had a thought about that, people waking up in their own way. And it's almost like, you know, when you're sound asleep and somebody runs into your room and they're just like, oh my fucking God, right? And they're just like screaming. And you kind of like wake up, you're like, where the hell
Mm-hmm.
am I? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like trying to wake somebody up instead of allowing them to hear their alarm clock and then have to like wake up themselves, and then they get
Mm-hmm.
to kind of have a moment to rub the sleepies out of their eyes, and then they can be like, oh holy shit. Right? But like yeah.
Yeah, and I think when I was that super amped up, super excited person, I also like really hadn't started doing the work yet. So I was telling all these people like, "Oh, this is also great. You have to like listen to these things and read these things and that's great and that's part of it, but like then you actually have to do the work." That's the hard
Then the
part.
shadow work hits you because
Mhm.
it's like, hey, so in order to attain this next level of stuff, which you are now aware of, which by the way, congratulations, you've opened the door.
And you
So
can't forget it now.
right, you can't forget it now. And so we actually have to do a little bit of healing, because in order to attain this frequency all the time, this other part of you that you had clung on to while asleep has to die. And they call it a death process for a reason. A lot of the times it can come with a lot of sadness and grief, and a
Mm.
lot of the who the hell am I now and what the hell do I do, confusion, and like you're literally sitting in the void. You are suspended in darkness. And it's a moment for you to sit and find peace and stillness and remember that this is a fucking game and that
Mhm.
we get to just play, and that the best way to find yourself out of the void is to ask yourself what it is that brings you joy.
Mm. I think that is a perfect transition into what we wanted to talk about today. I feel like based on the conversations that we've had, and it's probably been pretty similar to you, just that this last death process, I felt like I was sitting on a dead timeline for such a long time, and that is not something that I had experienced to that point. And as far as, days, weeks, months, whatever, I mean it was a while. Um, I think because it was so uncomfortable, it felt much longer than it actually was, but, um, I don't know, was that your experience too? Is that it just felt like it would not end?
I felt like I had died and like been buried, and then it was like, all right, now your new timeline isn't quite ready. So
Mhm.
you're just gonna have to sit here in this
Mhm.
old dead timeline while we wait for the universe to align things. Oh, but while you're dead, we're just going to like rip things open a little bit and like chuck some stuff out that you don't need to
Mhm.
take with you. So you're going to feel like you're dying over and over and over again while you're already dead. So congratulations. It's going to be a doozy. And that was pretty well from August until I moved here in November.
Mm.
And it was like, it was pretty interesting. Like I moved 3 hours north from my hometown, and that is the furthest away from home I have ever lived. I've lived 15 minutes outside of the city in all directions. throughout my 30 years of life. And yeah, now I am living just north of Calgary in a small little town. And I was like, I don't know anybody here, but like while being here, I've already met some pretty awesome people. My roommate's great. And my friend circle is already expanding, which is awesome. My business has kind of taken another like trajectory. I mean, once I moved here, I was asked by like 5 different people to do projects, and I was like, holy cow, like, wow, I'm so blessed. Like, thank you so much. And I mean, it just was interesting because it was like everything that I had been being told while in that death process. It is coming, right? And it's like, we promise you, like, I know it's uncomfortable. I was told that I would be leaving Lethbridge. And so I had time to prepare for that. And I didn't know where I was going to go, but I knew I would be leaving Lethbridge. And then I was told that the place that I was going to live was going to come to me and not even to bother looking. Oh, okay, sure. Um, yeah, let's just tell somebody who's, a little autistic and has ADHD with a slight bit of anxiety and likes to plan things, not to bother looking where they're gonna live.
Yeah, you have to leave. You're gonna leave where you are, but don't look for where you're going next.
Don't look. So sometimes it would catch me and I'd be like, okay, well maybe I should just take a peek, like. And so every single time I would pull up to look for places to live, I would have a blinding migraine to the point where my eyes would be crossed. I couldn't even read what I was trying to read. Well, you can't find a place to live like that, so okay, never mind. Or I would be so nauseous that I thought that I was going to throw up, and I was like, okay, fine, I get the picture. And as soon as I would close out of the app, it was fine. And so then I would have to sit there and I'm like, is this just like, is it nerves? Am I scared? Like, am I just not doing what I need to do because I'm scared? And again, the message would come to me, it's coming to you, like just chill. And so then I had to question, well, am I spiritually bypassing by being like, well, I feel safe now, so I'm just not gonna bother looking. I even had made a TikTok about it and then, kind of forgot. And about a week later, still haven't looked for a space to live. And I have 1 week left before I have to move. I had commented on somebody's post about self-love and I don't even remember what I commented. And they went into my TikTok of all freaking ways, hello universe, and was like, "Oh, this person reads tarot, like they're pretty cool." And commented on my spiritually bypassing video that was like, "Yeah, I'm like looking for a place to live, but I'm not allowed to look for a place to live." And they were like, "Where are you?" out of curiosity, because I'm in Crossfield, Alberta. And I was like, "Oh, well, that's cool." And so yeah, 4 days after they commented on my post, I came up here and I met them, and it was like bing bang boom. Within a week I had my stuff packed up and moved up here. Yeah,
That's incredible.
I know.
Way to wait till the very last minute, universe. Like, thank you.
But like, isn't that the point though? Because we
Yeah.
are trying to learn how to trust fall.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're like, okay, well, trust fall, but you only have to lean back 2 inches before I catch you. That
Mm-hmm.
happened in 2020 with little things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think
Yeah.
that it was like, you know, it's the universe is really wonderful. I mean, it is us and we are the universe, and the universe is always going to look after us and protect us. I mean, like, we're not going to be the type of person who looks at ourselves and all unconditional love and be like, I'm going to do what is the worst for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so like even sometimes when bad things happen, I mean, I went through a breakup and I was literally, well, not literally, almost homeless, because my parents were like, you can live in our woodshed, which was not a woodshed. It had been somebody's living quarters and it was
Mm.
turned into a woodshed and could have been turned back into living quarters. But it like didn't have like a bathroom or anything like that, so it was just like
Mm.
a place to sleep. And so not super ideal when you have 2 cats and you're in your 30s and wake up 2+ times to pee in the middle of the night. I also live in Canada, and don't fancy doing that in a bucket outdoors when it's minus 30, you know? Like,
Yeah, no,
so I was
not
like,
ideal.
you know, all right, universe. I'm like, at least if that happens, like at least I won't be homeless, and that's great. And so it was great to be able to just kind of trust fall into it and be like, whatever happens, happens. And I remember it was the drive up here to meet the landlords. It was pretty well the, hey, this is me, I'm moving in meeting. And I was still like, if it's meant to be, it will be. Because I was like, I was so almost desperately in a moment of unattachment. I was like, fuck that. I'm not attaching to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had had 6 other places come and fall through between the last 3 weeks of me living where I was living. So by the time this
Wow.
space came along, I was like, I'm not attaching to shit.
Yeah. No,
Like,
I get
I'm
it.
like, I will say thank you for the place to live when I move my stuff in. Like,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, my sort of similar experience to that was with I moved, but I also left my career and I moved without having a job. And that is not something I've ever done. I've never not had a job since I was a teenager. Um but basically the conversation I had with my boyfriend was like, okay, well, I'm going to start looking for jobs, and when I get one, then I'll move. And then like literally I was either getting rejections or no response at all. And it got to the point where, and he, the whole time he was like, just move here, like, just do it. And I was like, no, like, I want to be contributing. I want to, help support the household, pay the bills, whatever. And he's like, the whole time he's like, it's gonna be fine. We're gonna figure it out. You're gonna find a job. And I just, for at least a solid month, I was like, nope, I cannot move if I don't have another job. Just simply cannot do it. And then I actually got um a reading from someone else in the community, Leslie, and she sort of gently suggested, she's like, have you considered just like taking some time off? I was like, no, I have not considered that. And
Excuse me, no.
yeah, no, that sounds terrifying. I'd rather not do that. And so after that reading, I sat with that and I thought about it, and then I went to him and I was like, how would you feel about this if I intentionally took time off and let go of this whole I have to have a job before I move? He's like, I think you know how I feel about it. All right, that's fair. But
You
so I
should have
did
been
that.
packing already. Come on.
Yeah, I did that, and I had a little bit of a misunderstanding about my last paycheck. It's kind of a long story, but the short version is that I thought that I would get, like, the pay was behind, like I was getting paid for 2 weeks behind, and that I would get one more paycheck after I was already living here. And that is not at all what happened. First, I found out that that's not how it works, that the pay is on time, or up to date or whatever, and my last check would be my last day of work. But then, I also found out that's, I guess it's mostly my fault, but I had miscalculated my vacation time. And the week before my last day of work, I'd gone on a cruise, and it was something that had been planned for a while with my friends. So when I came back, I realized that I did not have enough time to take that vacation. And 2 of the days that I was gone was leave without pay. And I had a meltdown, really. I was on the phone with, like, the payroll people crying. It's not one of my best moments, but, like, basically, I was like, "Why would I do that? Why would I just go leave without pay at the very end, and not, like, why would I come back after that?" I came back and worked 3 more days, and they were like, "Well, we don't know why you would do that, but you did it." So, I did not get paid a full paycheck for my last paycheck, and that was terrifying because I had, calculated and planned, like, "All right, I'll have this much, and I'll be able to pay my bills through the middle of whatever." Um, so after I decided to do it, it felt like things were falling apart. Things weren't going the way that they were supposed to. And then I got here, and then because of who I am as a person, I struggled to actually, like, let myself relax. I had a really hard time with, like, the whole I'm not contributing, I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough spiral. And even still, I was steady applying for jobs and I was hearing nothing or I was getting a rejection. And then I found one, or I got offered an interview for one that seemed promising, and it was a remote job, but they did not, for whatever legal reasons, weren't currently hiring people in Louisiana. And so that was a bummer. And then I got into that place of like, well, was this a mistake? Am I just not going to find something? And all of that to say that a couple weeks ago, I started a job um, that I love. I waited. I was not very patient, but I waited, and it was a job that required experience that I didn't have, and I applied for it anyway. And so now I work from home, and I joked the other day that I could, 10 minutes before I have to be at work, I can take a shower and still be at work on time. And um, there's just so many benefits to working from home. But also, my first week at work, I was having so much fun doing what I was doing that I did not like. I had to consciously pull myself away from the computer at the end of the day. And I've never had a job like that where I've been excited. It's like, yeah, I don't mind going there every day. I have a really great time doing what I'm doing. Um, and I think a past version of me would have been presented with this opportunity and would have immediately said no, because I took a pretty considerable pay cut. Um, I was used to working for the government, and this doesn't quite have the same benefits that I'm used to having. So a couple things like that, but ultimately, I'll get a raise after 90 days. Um, they do bonuses, which I've never had a bonus before in my life. Um, and ultimately, the head attorney for the law firm that I work for has said that he wants me to and sees me running the department that I was hired in. Um, so current me was able to see this is an opportunity. This is not starting over. This is not a setback. Um, and there's a version of me that existed not that long ago that would have been like, oh, this is a pay cut. I can't do that. I can't do that. So anyway, that was quite the tangent. But all of that to say that this I think for you and I both, it was just like those I remember our conversations that we've had, or we would pull cards for each other, and it's just like the message over and over was like, just hang in there.
The
Just
same. Like,
it's on the way. It's gonna
was
be
it
okay.
was it for you or was it somebody else that I did? It was like within three different readings, two of them back to back literally had 5 out of 7 of the same cards
I think I
because
was one
I
of those people.
right? Yeah. And it was like I guess I have nothing else to add. Sorry, like scroll back up and read the last one because spirits like just repeat it.
Hmm.
But it's pretty interesting as a reader, like when you're first getting into tarot and stuff. I mean, now I just laugh at it and I'm like, of course it is, right? But like when you're first getting into tarot and stuff, you're like, this is like you can't make this shit up. Like, I mean,
Mm.
as you're shuffling, when you're reading for somebody back to back and there's in the same energy and you use the same deck and the same 5 cards come out, you're like, I don't know what
Okay.
to tell you, especially because I'm a reader that shuffles until a card jumps because
Mm.
I don't want to get in my own way as a reader
Mm.
and think, oh, did I do something by pulling this card and not that card? So
Mm.
I just have talked to my decks about, if you're the one, you got to jump out of the deck. And
I love that.
all of my decks are like, fine, that's totally cool. So yeah, they'll just throw them. And it's really funny because sometimes like 9 cards will come out and I'm like, no, 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 one at a time, or two, one or two I'll take.
Hmm.
But like 9 of them just explode and I'm like, the
That's too
energy's
much.
insane.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. What well, so for me, I think one of the most uncomfortable spaces to still be existing in on the dead timeline was my job. It just it took everything that I had to go there in the morning, and when I was there, I did enough because I was a probation officer, so like it's important documentation and all that. So I wasn't not doing my job, but I was not invested. Like I was checked out long before I decided that I was leaving. And at the end, especially, it was just like this. I am not just with my job, but really in general, it's like I am still living a life that is it's like not my life anymore. I'm still here and I don't understand why I'm still here.
And you
Um
can feel it like in every
yeah.
part of your body. It is just
Hmm.
draining. And especially when you take the flip side, like, I mean, what you're doing now, and you're like, I love my job and I have to remind myself to take breaks.
Hmm.
Amen to that. Holy cow. I have to remind myself that drawing every single day, even though I love doing it, is the
Hmm.
fastest way to make sure that I have to take 3 months off.
Hmm.
And it's like, even when you love it, you're going to get burnt out and you have to remind yourself to take those breaks. And one of the biggest things that I had to overcome was like when I no longer feel interested in what I'm doing, when I notice that like I'm starting to rush through the process because I just want to
Hmm.
get it done, I'm like, you're finished. And I've had to do that with projects that literally had maybe 15 to 20 minutes more work on them, but I
Hmm.
was like, I will not rush the end of this and it will be there
Hmm.
for me tomorrow. And one more day is not going to make somebody angry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very
Right.
true. Um,
Yeah.
what were some of those um maybe moments or periods of time for you where you had that same feeling of like that I this is not my life anymore, but I'm still here for some reason.
My last relationship.
Mm,
It was really interesting because even before we had moved in together, I think that we started to tell that the relationship was already on a downward spiral. And so there were many moments where I was questioning like their integrity behind moving in with me in the first place and whether or not they just wanted to get into town because they were previously living at their parents' house. And
mm,
so that whole question spiraled into a lot of resentment, and that was difficult. I had to work through a lot of like letting go and being like, you know what, even if those were their motives, even if they were, that's on them and they have to live with those decisions. And I know what I did, and I know I wasn't perfect either because I went through a lot of difficult growth. And when you're in an environment where you can feel that you're not thriving, it's
mm,
suffocating,
truly.
especially when everything that you were doing out of a trauma response. Hey, pay attention to me. Look at me. Look at all the things I'm doing for you. I'm good
Mm,
enough, aren't I? Aren't I good enough for you to love me? And so I'm cooking and cleaning and babysitting and, doing many things. Granted, yes, they were very busy. They were working two jobs and, they were a mom, and I'm sure that there was a lot on their plate and, whatever, but there was a lot that was extremely uncomfortable at the end. And it was so uncomfortable that I finally sat back and was like, oh, oh, this actually is just supposed to be this uncomfortable so that I'll leave it in the
mm,
past. And as soon as I realized that, like, I actually took it upon myself to do a cord cutting. And um, I don't recommend just jumping into a cord cutting for everybody who wants to be like done with someone in their life, because that was not um like, this went so much deeper than that. It had
mm,
been that we were connected throughout lifetimes, and that there was some past life trauma that was still there. And so without cutting that cord, I felt like I was very much attached to this individual.
mm,
And I even was crying on the phone to my friends, and I was like, I don't even like them anymore. Why do I want to be here? I
mm,
don't even like them anymore. Why am I still holding on? And it just, it hit me that it wasn't even my emotion. I was like, oh my God, like this is coming from somewhere else.
mm,
And so at that point, then I did a cord cutting, and it was so interesting to just like watch the hood come off over my eyes and see everything that was occurring, and whether they realized it or not. And I'm not going to like bash this individual for things that they did, because it could have been their own trauma response, but I had realized that they were gaslighting me, and that I
Mm,
was once again in another abusive relationship, and that everything was my fault. And I was like, I do not understand what I
mm,
have done to like incur this kind of anger. And I was like, oh, it happened after I cut the cord. They're no longer feeding off of my energy. They're doing
mm,
whatever they can to now get me to cling back onto them, whether they know it or not, because
mhm.
sometimes as energetic vampires, we don't know it. I can tell you I've been an energetic vampire previously in my life
Yeah.
as I've been asleep, you know, those moments where I'm literally like, pay attention to me, look at me, even in that trauma response, that is an energetic vampire, you know? So like I'm
Mm,
not an innocent person in that, but it just was so clear at that point. And then like behavior changed again to like do anything that they can to wound me. And at that point I was like, oh, I just totally see it now.
mm,
and and that was like the moment of like release. Like I completely had let go of that dead timeline. I was like, I know it's shifting now. I was like, I'm done with it. I'm over
mhm,
with it. And this was only about 1 week left before I was moving, was when it was this highly uncomfortable place. And so I just kind of had like that moment where I could see the dead timeline. And actually, this is a little tiny bit graphic. It did not happen, but I had a meditation climbing out of the coulee one time, and actually was listening to a Rihanna song. Um, the one where she's like, pull the trigger, like, I don't know, I can't even remember it now. But at that moment, like it has a gunshot in the song, and I saw myself pull a gun out and shoot my old self right in the face. And I
wow.
dropped to the ground and I stepped over this dead version of me and like was saying goodbye. And it was pretty violent, and I didn't understand why it needed to be that violent. But I realized that that old version of me was that traumatized individual that needed, look at me, look at me,
Mm,
can't you see all the things that I am doing for you?
mm,
And in that moment I feel like I was able to heal and release that. And then now that I have shifted and moved, I realize why all of the things had to happen on that dead timeline, where I was being like ripped apart and like things were throwing this way and that way for me to get here. So it definitely was that uncomfortable.
Yeah, that feels like an understatement. But it seems, before we get into our last rapid fire questions, it feels like the message here for people who might find themselves in this space, or for you and I finding ourselves in that space again at some point, as frustrating and annoying as it is, it's just like, hold on. Like, hold on.
And give
It's
yourself self love, because throughout the entire process, one of the major things, and I truly believe that this healing was the reason why I was able to, and yes, graphically and violently let go of that old piece of me. But it was because I started to do self love work. And I
mm,
had never in my entire life like been able to look in the mirror and be like, I love you and thank
mm,
you for everything that you have done.
that's
And I
so
know if I
great.
keep going, I'll just start crying. So, but it just truly has gotten to this space of self love. And when you love yourself like that, they always say that you can't love somebody unless you love yourself. And I mean, you can love somebody if you don't love yourself, but it's how you allow them to love you.
Mm,
And
I
when
love
you love
that.
yourself, you no longer allow people to treat you like you have to beg for attention. And you just get to live in your own weird, wild, cool energy, flowing this way and that way. And the people that are meant to be in your life are going to be the people that stick around to dance with you a little bit.
Hmm. There's some other quote or sentiment that I can't quite put together, but something to the effect of, the way that you love yourself is how how you teach others to love you. And so I totally agree. You can love somebody if you don't love yourself, but the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you treat yourself, the way that you take care of yourself, you're showing other people like this is what I tolerate. So I'll tolerate it from you too. Um yeah, that's great. This has been great. You ready for some rapid fire questions?
Oh boy, here we go.
It's not as stressful as it sounds, I promise. So number one is, what is the most difficult lesson you've had to learn, or maybe you're still learning on your healing journey?
Oh boy. Um, I truly feel like the umbrella category could just be placed under codependency. And
Mm,
again, it's just been that self love journey that I'm still in the middle of that process. And I'm sure that I will continue to grow throughout that process. But it's been really interesting being able to find comfortability in being alone and
mm,
not needing to have somebody there and not needing to have somebody validate who you are because you already know it within yourself. And that has been probably one of the best parts about this journey as well, because it just leads to so many other things like self-belief and just holding your own power and remembering who the fuck you are.
well, and part of that too is not um putting things on hold that you want to do just because you don't have someone to do them with. That
Absolutely.
was big for me, especially last year. Is like, I want to go to this thing, but I don't have anyone to go with me. I'm just gonna go. Like, I want to go, so I'm gonna go. I don't have to have somebody to go with me.
I remember
Um,
one of the first times I went to go see a movie by myself, even like sitting in a dark theater, just watching a movie by myself. That was one of the best experiences of my life. And let me tell you, I'll never see another movie with anyone again. I'm just kidding.
you have to share
No.
your snacks when other people are there.
Exactly. No, I just watch movies at home now. I have too many allergies to get snacks at the theater. They don't let you bring your own, so that's just a shame.
All right, number two, what has been the most helpful tool for you throughout your journey, whether it's some sort of healing modality or a book or some other resource?
I would have to say tarot in itself, just because not only has it been a way for me to be able to visualize and see the things on the cards, but also to learn that sometimes when you get the same card, that it can pull out different things in your intuition, and then leaning into your intuition, and it just really helped me to grow and be more comfortable in listening to that own inner voice,
Mm.
which was great because I myself don't really use the books when I read with tarot. I just go based off of the feeling that the picture puts in front of me.
So yeah, sometimes I usually don't read the books either, but sometimes
I
I just
send
have
the
that.
book.
There's something in here though.
Mhm.
When I'm just pulling for myself, it's like you need to pull out the book because there's something in there for you too. Like, all right, well,
When I pull for myself, I usually will read the book, for me, just because I don't again want to second guess myself and get in the way. And I do find it much more difficult to read for myself than for other people. When I read for other people, it's really interesting. I almost get out of my own way, especially when I text it, that I
mm.
will like, I'll reread it after and go, damn, that's some good advice.
I have certainly gotten lots of good readings from you. That's for sure.
You can thank your guides, my higher self. I did none of it. I can promise you. No.
Number three, what is the message you feel called to share with your inner child today?
Oh, to enjoy other people's company. I know that that can sometimes be difficult, and I have been a little bit of a recluse for a long time, which doesn't always make sense when you're codependent because then, you're like, well, I just want to hide out in here. Don't you want to hide out in here with me? Right. And I know that that was a lot to do with the fact that you didn't always understand that being in crowds meant feeling a lot of things from other people.
Mm,
But now that now that we're here, little darling, we know a lot more about boundaries and how to
Mm,
allow our own energy to encompass ourselves and to push out the energy that doesn't belong. So remember to have fun with other people.
I keep interjecting, which takes away from the rapid fire part of this, but what you just said about being in crowds reminded me. I was successfully influenced by Instagram the other week, and I bought these. They're like earbuds, uh, but it's like the weirdest thing. So I can hear other people, like I can still talk to people fine. It doesn't affect the way that I hear other people speaking, but it blocks out everything else. And I want to start using them in public. Mostly I bought them because when I'm working from home, my dogs bark at everything, and I wanted to be able to like work and at least have that not so loud and overwhelming. But they're the coolest thing.
That
Successfully
sounds
influenced. They
fantastic.
got me. They're called like
Seriously,
loop buds or something like that.
I laugh
And
all
they
the time
make
about how I
go
can
ahead.
hear something better in another room than somebody like right in front of me. If you're having a conversation with me and something's happening in another room, you can bet that I didn't hear anything that you
Mm-hmm.
said
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard everything going on over there.
Tuned in over there. And they have like a quiz that you can take, and like basically they figure out what you're trying to accomplish because they have different versions, and it's like I just want these for sleep, or I want these for whatever. And it so I took the quiz and it told me the ones that were best, and I was successfully influenced.
Science.
What is a message you feel called to share with a version of you that existed this time last year?
Oh boy. Hold on. And I'm probably the one that came in 500 times throughout the last year just telling myself to hold on because now that we are here,
Mm,
I can promise you myself that the journey, even as hard as it was, is worth it because the things that are surrounding you now and the things that are coming in for you now are so exciting that there really aren't even words for
mm,
how perfect and how much you've been waiting for what's coming.
It's like those things that you couldn't even imagine for yourself.
Every
And for me
single
this time
time.
last year, things I could not even dream
Mm-hmm.
up.
That's exactly the same. And like even some of like some opportunities that are kind of poking their head out of the woodwork, I'm just like that. If I could get on with that, like that would be incredible because that's
Hmm.
everything that I would love to pour my energy into. And I'm just so excited for what's coming. I just really feel a sense of community happening right now. I feel like, it's time to gather.
That's great. I'm so excited for you. Um, Two more. What would you say to someone who's at the beginning of their own journey, just waking up, feeling very lost and unsure?
Good luck. No, you are stronger than you realize
Mm,
because if you take a moment to look back on your life and see all the incredibly difficult things that you never thought you would make it through, you're there at that moment thinking about those things, having survived those things, and whatever is coming down the line, because an awakening is twofold:
mm,
incredible and incredibly difficult. The healing part of it is so beautiful and so rewarding when you get through that release. But we have been so programmed and so primed for shoving things down and for not sitting with them and for not thanking them for being what they were in our life, for
mm,
being things that taught us what we will and will no longer put up with in our lives, for how we can now take those old patterns and reprogram them into things that will catapult you into the best and most gloriously fulfilling life that you can not even imagine.
mm. Someone hearing that is like, yeah, okay. But like, really though, really though.
Truly, it really all starts with like your heart's desire. And it's like when we finally start leaning into our heart's desire with that self-love, which then leads to unconditional love for everybody, which then just leads to you wanting the best for everyone. Not, and like people are like, well, like it's such a selfish journey. And I'm like, hey, but how else can I want the best for someone else if I don't want the best for myself? So you're
Mm,
goddamn right. It's going to be a selfish journey for a minute because until I can hold all of that love for myself, I can't give
mm,
that love to other people.
mhm. Incredible. Last question. Where can people find you, work with you, get a reading, get some clothing?
I have a website, jetartworks.space. I can be found on Instagram at jet.artworks. I can be found on TikTok at Jess Walker 25. And I also have a tarot for Instagram at jet.tarot. So lots of places. I'm also on Facebook. You can either look up Jess Walker, Jet Artworks, Jet Tarot. You can find me all over the place. For anybody who is watching a video of this, this is an example of one of the shirts that you can find on my website. There actually, I might have to put this one back up because this one was off of one of my old sites. So you can't actually find this one right now. But there are many others and many other products too. I have stickers and tumblers and lots of other cool stuff up there. So
How do you get a website dot space? That's so cool.
isn't that amazing? Oh gosh. Well, I went on to squarespace.com. So and they at the end give you an option for different URL codes or something. So I could have been like .com, I could have been .ca. Actually, I think .ca was taken. Anyway, there was .space and I was
Dot
like,
space.
listen,
That's it.
that's the one.
That's
I'm
the
like,
one.
that's the one. Especially because I love to incorporate space into a lot of my artwork. So yeah, it was just
Perfect.
too perfect.
Oh, well, this has been so great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
You're
Usually
welcome.
at the end is where I shout out you for the cover art and I shout out Doug
Hey,
Halliday for the music. And shout out also to my friend Leanne who did the new intro and outro. And with that, I will see you all next time. Bye.
bye.